Okay, for the y values, you have to think about the shape of your graph. So a sine graph, when I draw a period, is going to go starting at the midline. It's going to then go up to its maximum, back to the midline, down to the minimum, back to the midline. Okay, if it's a positive sine function. If it's a negative sine function, it's going to be going down, up, down. My cosine function is going to start at the maximum, come down to the midline, go through to the minimum, back up to the midline, and back up to the maximum, like that. Okay? So we have three key y value points. We have the midline, the maximum, and the minimum. Okay? Maximum, midline, minimum. So I want to know where those three values are. And then this is easy. So in my function, the midline is just k. So in this case, my sine function, the midline is -1. Now to figure out the maximum and minimums, I'm just going to add and subtract the a value, okay, which is 2/3. So again, here comes some addition with fractions. So that's the only reason this step gets complicated. So to find the maximum, I'm just going to add a to it. So I'm going to do -1 plus 2/3. So in order to do that, again, I need to kind of rearrange this and call this like -3/3 plus 2/3. So it's -1/3. Okay, so that's the maximum, -1/3. And to find the minimum, I'm going to subtract an a value. So again, I'll do the same thing, and you're going to get -4/3. No, sorry about that. I was trying to like save time and skip steps. -5/3. Let me confuse you. Okay, I don't want to write it out because the video is going to be too long. Okay, so that's the value for my maximum, the midline, and the minimum. Now all I have left to do is assign these. So in my sine function, it starts at the midline, which is -1, goes to maximum, -1/3, back to midline, then the minimum, which is -5/3, and it ends at the midline, -1. So on my table, all I have to do is assign these. The midline is -1, and it's going to be at those points right there. The maximum is -1/3, and the minimum is -5/3. Those are my y values. Now, if it were the cosine, I would just do the same thing to figure out midline, maximum, and minimum. But if it was like a cosine function, then my maximum would be where I start. So up here would be a -1/3. Then it would go to midline, which would be -1, minimum, which would be -5/3, midline, which is -1, and back to the maximum, which would be -1/3. Okay, so when you figure out those three numbers, you just assign them wherever they need to go on the y values. This is really it. The problem's done. This is the table. Graph it now, you know. And for me, and I'm sure for Mrs. H as well, as long as you've got this table, and then you draw some ugly picture like this, boom, this is perfect right here. This is full credit. Okay, you got the shape right there. I really don't care about what the x value is because it's just a pain in the butt. As long as you have the table to back it up, boom. That's beautiful right there. Okay, hopefully that helps, guys. Send me your questions.